Hello everyone and welcome to the tutorial of Coralize. To start, I'd like to give you a bit of background about the tool. It's basically a Unity tool, a Unity script actually, which helps you build reefs and the components that make up the reef, which are the corals. To get started, once you import the package into Unity, you simply go to game object, create a there, and you'll have a new, two actually new game objects, which are reef and water current. We're gonna start from the reef. You're gonna click reef, and then your game object is gonna be created. As you can notice, you've got the script attached, which I'm gonna describe in detail in a minute. To start with, let's put our reef game object next to the other game objects. Okay, so there's my reef generator game object there. So the script is split into two main parts. The first part is the corals. This basically describes which corals you're gonna have in your reef. It's basically a pool of different coral types, which at the end are normal game objects and normal prefabs, which are gonna go into your reef. The second bit describes more the environment of your reef. I'm gonna go into more detail in the second part of the tutorial. Let's first focus on how to create corals. There are two ways to basically start making these game objects, which is the manual mode, which is a more kind of advanced way to create them because you need to know how the system really works. And there's the semi-automatic, which is a mixed initiative kind of way of generating the corals. Basically, the machines will give you suggestions and help you generate them. Let's start from the manual one. Once we click add, we're gonna get this new window with three main sections, actually four, but the important ones are these three. I'll explain later what the fourth one is. Basically, these three sections represent three different algorithms of ways to create the corals. Stony coral, let's go one by one through them. The first one, Stony coral. In fact, internally this algorithm uses L systems to create branch-like, fractal-like structures. You've got different parameters over here. I'm not going to go into much detail about these parameters. You can check the documentation of the tool. But basically modifying these parameters will generate different kind of corals. Once you tweak them accordingly, you press generate and you're gonna have a preview of the coral that's generated. For example, let's modify a bit the iteration, which is how many times the grammar is evolved. So if I decrease it, I'm gonna get less complex structures. If I increase it, I'm gonna get more complex ones. Obviously, as you notice, it's gonna be a bit slower the more I increase the iterations, or as far as the tool is concerned, any other parameter, it might be slower. Okay, so be careful how to use these parameters. There are three different grammars that I used to give kind of like a proof of concept. There is obviously many more kind of L-system grammars that can be used to generate corals, but for the sake of this tool I only used three. Okay, that's another kind of coral. It's the more bony kind of coral, and this is like the sea fan. Let's decrease a bit the thickness. It's more like the sea fan kind of coral. Okay, so as you can see, I'm tweaking these parameters, and when I tweak them, I get different structures. In the meantime, I don't know if you noticed, apart from this preview here, you also get a preview under your reef generator game object, which is a 3D preview this time. So you might be you're able to see it in more detail, the structure that you're creating. And when I generate new ones, this will be updated. A good thing to know is that this is gonna be like the template of your Coral. So if you need to attach, for example, a special kind of script to it, I don't know, maybe I want the player to, I want to decrease the health of the player if he touches the coral, I can go ahead and attach a script to this game object, and that will be used later in all the instances of this coral that I created. Okay. So yeah, once I'm happy with my coral, I just press done. As you notice here, there are more. Actually, the materials we can go into it now. The materials, I can select a texture to give my coral. Okay, you simply press here and then select your texture. You can select more than one actually. What will happen? Again, I'm getting the preview here to make sure that I like the texture. If you don't like it, you can just remove it. What will happen with these textures later, they will be selected at random. For example, this will get a 50% chance of either being red or being blue, this coral. Okay. These 4 parameters over here, I'm gonna go into them later. These are used when I'm actually placing the coral over my reef. Okay, so let's leave it to that now. When I'm happy with my coral, I press done, and I will notice that in my reef generator game object, I will have a new coral now. The second type of coral is a soft coral. It uses a completely different algorithm based on leaf venation, basically the veins that make up a leaf. And while researching this thesis, I was noticing that most coral structures look similar to these leaf vein structures. So I decided to use this algorithm, and in fact it produced some really cool results which actually really resemble normal corals. Let's use these parameters. As you can see here, that's actually leaf vein pattern, but in fact it resembles a coral. Okay, again I can modify my parameters to get different structures. Okay, and here, for example, in this particular algorithm, I can adjust, for example, the shape of my coral. Okay, if I regenerate like that, you'll notice that's a bit thicker now, the coral. Okay, again I'm gonna assign a material. Yeah, let's give it a purple-like yellow material. And again, when I'm happy, I press done. And my new coral will go there. The third one is another algorithm that I got from while doing research about corals. In fact, there's a really good mathematical model of to create a particular class of corals. It uses fluid dynamics to see where the nutrients where there's lots of density of nutrients, and you grow the coral accordingly. The problem with this algorithm is that it's really slow, so I implemented a naive version of this coral, which basically shoots some random particles and then grows a mesh accordingly. Again, all these parameters control how the algorithm works. So yeah, let's go ahead and generate our sponge. Note that the first time we're gonna press generate sponge, it's gonna take a bit of time. Basically what it's doing is initializing all the initial meshes that are used for this particular algorithm. So don't worry, it's only just for the first time. Okay, so I'm gonna press generate sponge. Okay, so once I press generate sponge again, a new mesh would be generated. These, as you can see, they are more like sponge-like corals. Okay, again I can tweak the parameters to get all the different results, right? And I can actually make the mesh a bit more detailed. Okay, yeah, that's cool. Let's use that one. Again, I'm gonna assign a material. Let's give it a yellow material, and I press done when ready. So those are my three corals in my reef right now. So as you notice, you need to have a good understanding of what the parameters do. Ideally, you don't just play with them, you know what they're doing. This can be a bit difficult, especially for non-familiar users, or maybe if you haven't read the documentation. So the second way of generating corals is actually much easier. Basically, the machine is going to suggest to me different corals that can be generated with that particular algorithm, and I select the ones I like. Once I regenerate another generation of these suggestions, and eventually these suggestions will start getting closer to what I really want. Let's see it in action. So I press add semi-automatic. So for example, the Stony coral, I press generate suggestions, and as you can see, 10 suggestions are generated. I quite like, for example, this one, the one that looks a bit thick. Okay, I generate another set of corals, and actually I don't like these ones anymore, so let's generate again. Okay, let's select these two that look a bit thinner. Okay, and as you can see, the results immediately start propagating towards what I really want. Okay, for example, okay, I like that one. And the rest is all similar to the previous way of generating that we used. Okay, one important parameter to notice is this one, the waiting time. How I'm ready to wait for the generations to be generated. The more time I'm ready to wait, the more complex the corals are gonna be. Okay, let's do it, for example, 3 seconds. You're gonna notice that more complicated structures are created. Okay, as you can see, this one is quite complicated. You can also, if you are a bit familiar with the parameter, or you're just curious to see what parameters manage to produce this kind of coral, you can still click on advanced and see the previous parameters that were used. You can also actually tweak them to affect this, by the way, uses a genetic algorithm. You can tweak them to affect the genetic algorithm and say, okay, I want that now to be used in my next generation. Okay, once I'm happy, I press done, and there's my coral. Okay, an important thing that I forgot is this one, for example. I forgot to assign a material to it. Don't worry, you can always click on back on the coral, and you'll get this window again. This actually has a material, just didn't assign it to it. Okay, so let's click materials. Okay, and I press done. Okay, I'm gonna show you the genetic algorithm for the other corals. Okay, this is for the one for the soft coral. Okay, you can start that the results start. You can see that the results start going to what you really want. Okay, this one looks cool. So let's press done. Again, forgot the material. Okay, so that was how to generate my coral pool. Okay, I think we've got enough for this tutorial. You can generate as much as you want. You can have 20 different corals in your reef. Okay, you can also select other prefabs that for example, if I want rocks in my reef too, I can go to existing prefab and select a rock, and that rock will eventually go in my reef too. Okay, I'm gonna remove the rock though to keep it down to corals only. Okay, so now that I have my corals in the coral pool, I need to start placing them in my actual scene, right? Okay, I've got this example scene. It's got an island and some water. So I need a way to actually start putting the corals in my scene. So the first thing that I need to specify is obviously the seabed, where the corals are gonna sit. And that, as you can imagine, it's in the environment bit. Okay, all I do is just drag my seabed, which is usually a terrain, to the seabed parameter. Right? I'm gonna remove the sea so we can see the whole seabed, and I'm gonna drag my terrain onto seabed. So now, when I pass the mouse over the terrain, you notice that a brush comes up. Okay, this is a brush very similar if you've used the tree tool in the terrain or the material tool. Okay, it will basically take whatever is in this pool of corals and place it on the reef at random in that circle. You can enlarge the circle if you want, you can decrease it, and you can specify how many corals are put on each click. Okay, be careful because upon dragging you're putting more corals, so don't put the density up to way too much. Okay, let's put it down to 2. Okay, so basically if I click, in this case I've got a density of 2, so I had 2 corals put at random. If I click again, I'll have another 2. You can bias the randomness. For example, I don't want the sponge to appear so much, so I'm gonna decrease the random value of how much it gets put there. Okay, and now you'll notice that it rarely gets put. If I put it down to 0, it will never get put there. Okay, to delete the corals, you simply press Shift while dragging your mouse. Okay, by the way, and you can drag your mouse as well to create the coral. As I said before, be very careful because as you see, this will create loads of corals. Okay. Alright, so let's go a bit into the placement parameters. When I clicked here, okay, so I click there and I'm clicking over this wall. You can notice the difference of the orientation. Okay, sometimes we want our coral to follow the orientation of the reef. Okay, for example, in these kind of corals grow perpendicular to the reef. However, these kind of corals, the sea fans, most of them will follow the orientation of the surface of the water. So this wouldn't be a right way to place the sea fan. To lock the orientation, you simply go click on the coral, and we've got those 3 parameters that we described before here. And if you click lock orientation, it will keep the original orientation of the coral. Okay, so if I retry now, so let's lower all of these, so only this one gets put. If I put it again, you can see that the orientation is now fixed. Okay, that went a bit into the terrain, but you can adjust that. Another thing about this brush is that you can assign a random rotation. Okay, if I put many of these colors, you'll notice that they all face the same way, and that could be a bit boring. Okay, so you can actually give a random rotation to the coral, either the X, the Y, or the Z. For this case, obviously, we're gonna rotate the Y axis, okay, because it would go into the reef. Okay, so if I do the same now, you'll notice that they all get a different rotation. This is facing that way, this one's facing this way, and so on. Okay, another thing that you can affect is scale. Okay, so I'm gonna give it a random scale from half of its size to its size. Okay, so you can see we've got now little ones, bigger ones, and so on. And I can also specify the depth. Okay, the depth is how much it goes into the terrain. If I change this to -0.5, you'll see that it actually goes into the terrain. Okay, obviously again I don't want that, so I'll put that back to 0. Okay, so these parameters you can modify according to any coral. Okay, so let's put these back to full randomness. The sponge actually is a bit big compared to the others, so let's adjust the scale to a maximum of 0.5 to 0.7. Okay, that's a bit better. Okay, so basically what's happening underneath here is nothing really special, right? What we're doing basically is taking an instance of this game object and doing an exact copy of it. Okay, and that might be good for some situations, but not so good for others. If I look closely at these two, you can see that they're exactly the same object. Okay, if your coral reef, if the player is not gonna go so close to your reef, maybe that's ideal because it's faster. Okay, and he won't really notice that these corals are all the same. If you see a whole bunch of them, you will just see like a forest of corals. You won't really notice that they're all the same. But if the player is actually getting really close to them, you'd notice that they're all the same. They're all the same kind of game object, and that is one of the main aims of this project. It's basically to procedurally generate each coral in a different way. So to do that, we select the automatic brush mode. Okay, and this time when I do the exact same thing, you'll notice that it's gonna first generate a cube. It's gonna create like a placeholder, and in the background it's gonna start generating a new instance of that coral, but from scratch, so they won't be the same. Okay, so let's try now. You'll notice that I'm gonna get many boxes, and in the background it's gonna start creating my coral. Okay, you can appreciate that this might be a bit time consuming. In fact, this sponge is taking a bit of time, so I'm not gonna do so many sponges for the sake of this tutorial. Okay, but now you can see. Okay, let's take the previous example, because this is easy to detect whether it's the same or not. If I put loads of these, although, okay, the structure is still the same, but if you notice them closely, they are actually different. Okay? For example, this one has a branch that's going out, this one has a branch that's going down. Okay, so they are actually different. Okay, so the automatic mode has another cool feature. Basically, it takes into consideration water currents. So basically what happens in real life, in real reefs, the currents affect the thickness of the corals. Okay, basically currents distribute more nutrients to the corals, and they're actually a bit thicker, the corals. So to create a water current, I just go to game object. Okay, that created a water current in my 0, actually 0, 0, 0 location. I'm gonna place it next to the reef generator. So let's put it, so that's 1240, 950. Okay, so the water current is now close to my actual reef. Okay, this arrow represents the way my current is going, and it's got the strength, how many meters it goes far, and the radius, how big the circle of the current is. I'm gonna do it to 2. Okay, so let's place, where did it go? So it's important, obviously, that the current is under the sea level. So let's re-enable the sea to make sure. In fact, it's over the sea level. Let's put it under the water. There we go. Okay, and for example, I'm gonna do a current pointing in this direction. So let's rotate it a bit and see that the height is okay. Actually, let's put it behind the hill to see the different. Let's put it behind this hill here. Okay, so in theory what would happen if I've got, in practice actually, if I've got a current in my reef system going this way, any corals that are behind the hill, behind the current, will get sheltered. So actually their structure, you'll notice that it's a bit thinner, okay, and these ones are a bit thicker. So if I add the water current to my reef system, so to do that, I go into water currents. I say, okay, I've got one current. You can have more than one current. You can have 3, for example. And I just drag my current over there. So now if I'm gonna do, yeah, there we go. If I'm gonna place a coral in front, facing the current, let's try this one, the blue one. You'll notice that they're a bit thicker because they're in front of the current, and in fact, you can see this one at the back. It's a bit sheltered, a bit more sheltered than from the current, so it's a bit thinner. Okay, if I actually put the same coral behind the hill, you'll notice that they're much thinner because they're not getting affected by the current. Okay, and this way we've got a current system in our reef too. Okay, the last feature that I want to show you is the grow reef. The grow reef basically, that's what it says. It takes the coral that are currently there now and starts propagating them. Okay, how normal corals would grow. Okay, so let's put a few corals here and there. Again, I don't want so many sponges. The thing that it needs, this feature, is that you specify the seaplane. This feature takes care also of the depth of the water. Okay, in real life, again, corals don't grow obviously above the water because they can't live. They need salt water and nutrients to grow, and they go down to a certain depth. Okay, so for this functionality, we'll need to specify our water, which is a plane, and upon pressing grow reef, it would start growing our reef. Okay, and as you notice, it doesn't go past our water plane. Okay, if you see that line there, that's actually where the water stops. Okay, let's see if it's generating for a while. Obviously, you might appreciate that to generate each and every coral could be a bit time consuming, so you need to give it a bit of time. As you notice also, the way the corals grow according to the amount of corals there are. For example, this yellow coral here is taking a bit over this part of the reef because there's more of them. The purple coral is taking over this hill. Okay. Here in this area you can also see the thick corals that are affected by the current. Okay, so voila, there's our reef there. So yeah, basically those are all the features of the tool. In the end, we can have a look. Let's re-enable the water. Oh, re-enable the water. And I'm gonna run the game to actually see. So now under the water we're gonna see loads and loads of corals. Okay, that's my reef over there. In this case, all the corals have a collider with them, so I cannot go through them. If you want to remove the collider, it's not a problem. You just remove it off your prefab in the pool, and it wouldn't be there. Okay, so that was it. Hope you liked my tool. It will be available on Asset Store. Okay, I will put the link in the description of this video. Hope you like it, and if you've got any feedback or suggestions, please don't hesitate to comment or contact me with your comments. Thanks a lot.